Alone is a word that stands alone. These words emerge from the necessity of being alone. Being alone is something that terrifies the everyday person, or makes them ecstatic. Alone is a condition we find while ever being connected, especially in the day and age we find ourselves in, with smartphones, laptops, and the internet doing its absolute best to keep us entertained, our attention bound in. Others, and myself, can't help but, in spite of all the strides towards convenience and staying connected, feel alone. Human beings themselves strive for connection. I've learned, plus experienced, that human beings are social creatures, and boy, are we. People are simultaneously both the reason I am still living and the very things that have caused me the most suffering throughout life. We live with each other, tie ourselves and the people around us to one another with marriages, friendships, job titles, and things like money and debt, which are all constructs made by man, made to control man. All comes from our fear, our forgetfulness of standing alone. We fall farther and farther away from that day by day. Now, myself and my fellow man in my 20s struggles to even go outside without headphones or earbuds in. Can you imagine how much time we actually give ourselves to spend time with ourselves, to simply watch or observe? The fear of finding ourselves alone is playing a part in what creates a lot of man's issues. He's responsible for creating them himself. We cannot relate to another until we are able to conquer our fears of facing loneliness. When I was 15, I had a devastating breakup with my high school girlfriend over her being with somebody else at the time we were dating. So, rules of deduction, I was being cheated on. I bet you didn't see that one coming. That's a plot twist. I pushed her away in a lot of ways, with being clingy and emotionally reactive to things she had going on that inevitably, eventually pushed her towards someone else. I cried and cried over this girl, man. I saw pictures of them kissing and was heartbroken, and I did dumb things to run away from having to face, well, myself. I played around with women, buried myself into video games. I even drank occasionally. If you know me, you know I stay away from substances like the plague now, and I pride myself on it pretty hard. But I drifted and did poorly with school, and this is a part of my life. So during this time, one early morning, after being over at one of my good friend's houses, I took his .22 rifle and went hunting for rock chucks out around where his great-grandfather's wood stack was. A pastime we were tasked with was eliminating these little buggers, because they dug holes all over his grandfather's yard and left little turds all over his stock of wood. Disgusting. I left before my friend woke up, alone with the .22, and walking into the woods around where I knew that pile of wood was. There was one point on the walk where I considered pointing that barrel up towards my own jaw and pulling the trigger. My mind was absolutely consumed in betrayal, suffering, and had no hope. The girl was all that I had. Then at one point, standing out towards the edge of what I now noticed was a lush forest. I looked at the ground and noticed the green overgrown wave of strands waving back and forth towards me, attempting to pull me out of my self-perpetuated brooding cycle of how bad things were. A field of grass was swaying out in the wind, a plane looking to tell me I wasn't alone. The wind now whistling in my ears to nudge me towards noticing Mother Nature, noticing what was right in front of me. Out of fear of being alone, I remained in a relationship that paradoxically, as intimate as it was, drove me to feeling the most isolated and alone I'd ever felt in my life. Through being alone that day, I found that I was never alone to begin with. I walked back with the gun and never had felt so connected with the world around me. Solitude is closing doors to allow for another one to open. Choosing to be alone can be a shift from drinking out of a vast, shallow water to drinking from a deep well. One must be cast from the burning pain of isolation to find this, though. To find oneself alone among others. Quote, "Flee into your solitude. You have lived too closely to the small and the pitiful. Flee from their invisible vengeance. For you, they have nothing but vengeance." Friedrich Nietzsche, from Thus Spoke Zarathustra. The pain I chose to receive from others allowed me the opportunity to become my best friend. With being forced to face my aloneness, I had a choice to fight it and avoid facing myself, or address myself and my issues. Ironically, when I chose to face and listen to myself, I could then properly listen to others. When I learned how to speak to myself, I could then speak to others in a way that made them feel seen. The important foundation to discovering this insight was finding how to be alone. The space inside of finding the stillness of solitude leads you to notice how invariably everything is connected. The way your dad treated you, the thing you said to the barista at that coffee shop that made them lighten up and treat other customers with the same loving kindness you showed them, the steps and variables that went into the clothes you're wearing, the rooms you walk through. The device you're even watching this on has its own process and its own narrative into how it got into your hands, into your gaze. Ultimately, being so interconnected, being one, we face the cosmos alone as one. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I love being alone, so you should spend some time with yourself today. And to end this video, I would like to quote Krishnamurti, quote, "Why do you want a friend? Is it because you are lonely? Is it because you depend or rely on them? Is it to have companionship? Is it out of your insufficiency, depending on another to fulfill or fill that emptiness, and therefore you are exploiting another to cover your insufficiency and utter emptiness, and so call that person a friend?" Most of us are lonely, and the older we get, the more lonely. We discover our emptiness, what it means to be lonely, to have no friend at all because you have led a superficial life and invested your thought, your feelings in another. And when they go away or die, you feel so lonely and empty. Out of that emptiness, there is self-pity, and then you again begin the game of seeking somebody to fill that loneliness. Can you see all this and learn from it? Learn what it means to be lonely and not escape from it. Look at it, live with it. See what is implied so that psychologically you depend on nobody. Then only will you know what it means to love. Krishnamurti, from Meeting Life. Thank you.
I have so much time to really consider myself and to really figure things out, and that's a good thing, right? Because I can really kind of understand what is for me and what isn't, right? And who is for me and who isn't. And when you have the silence of no social relationships, or little to none, right, you get the whisper, you get the through the grapevine effect, where you can kind of hear underneath everything what people latently think about you, right? Because you don't have all these other people saying directly to you what's going on in their life or seeding you with ideas that they have about you, right? I can just sit for a long time and sort of hear underneath everything what is going on. And I have kind of an observational perspective to where I can kind of observe things.